Thanks for tuning in to another installment of Advanced TV Herstory, a podcast that studies, analyzes, and celebrates women in television. Thousands of comedies, variety shows, and dramas and other events have aired, yet the presence of strong women, both in front of and behind the camera, is an experience we need to understand better and embrace. With an eye to aligning the leadership lesson, time capsule observation, or fascinating backstory of a show's success or failure, my goal of Advanced TV Herstory is to connect the treasures of the past to the great potential of today's TV and online platforms. Tomorrow's success is rooted in understanding what has come before us. So gear up for a little sociology, economics, strategy, storytelling, and fun. It's all here at Advanced TV Herstory. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. There's something special about the shows you watched when you were a kid. Maybe they hold such fond memories because you could sit on the couch for hours on end just watching and petting the cat. They become the shared experience that starts in elementary school and crystallizes into credibility when you hit college. Oh, you watched Bionic Woman too? Well, then you must be okay. Yes, Bionic Woman may have been the cue for kids who grew up in the 70s, and for those born in the early 90s, they have the Powerpuff Girls. Because we hope that there are listeners of all ages loyally downloading podcasts, regardless of just how much they know about the topic, this installment of Advanced TV Herstory examines the show from a broad view. In other words, for anyone unfamiliar, I'll go slowly enough to explain the premise of the Powerpuff Girls, its enormous popularity, and some of the chatter that took place in the background when the show was at its height in the late 90s and early 2000s. For those who wore flannel PPG pajamas and still have them in a box somewhere, well, consider this to be the jump start to receiving the next wave of Powerpuff Girls. The relaunch, complete with new vocal talent and a somewhat muted color palette, takes place next year, 2016. These three characters in this show, okay, together they form a phenomenon, are indeed worthy of study here in Advanced TV Herstory. So, don't touch that dial. In the late 1990s, the Powerpuff Girls took America by storm. The premise is good versus evil. They are crime fighters right out of a comic book factory, but for the fact that they're in kindergarten, and they don't really have hands, or feet, or pupils to speak of, and two of the three do hold superpowers.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice. These were the ingredients chosen to create the perfect little girl. But Professor Utonium accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction, Chemical X. Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born. Using their ultra superpowers, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup have dedicated their lives to fighting crime and the forces of evil.
As three girls, technically triplets if you want to get into it, complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. Their imperfections fall right into line with that of any kindergartner, so frequent viewers appreciate the attention to teeth-brushing rituals, temper tantrums, icky food and matter, and appearance of animals and bugs. Now about the girls. Blonde with hair and pigtails, Bubbles is the kindest of the three, and can communicate in foreign languages and with animals. Her superpower is her vocal ability to emit supersonic waves, but she can be strong and defiant. Emmy-nominated vocal talent Tara Strong voiced Bubbles as well as Dylan Pickles, the character in the Rugrats, and many other very well-known animated characters across many different networks. Buttercup is the black-haired one. She's a doer, not a planner. She loves a good confrontation. Buttercup doesn't possess any superpower, but is a tomboy who frequently starts the fight, or gets dirty, or takes on physical risk. Elizabeth Daly is the voice of Buttercup, and is also an actress and a stand-up comic, who also voices Tommy Pickles of the Rugrats. On the Powerpuff Girls' first CD, the Japanese band Shonen Knife performed the incredibly infectious tribute to Buttercup entitled Supergirl. Listen for that clip shortly in this podcast. Blossom, the redhead, fashions herself the leader of the group. She's the least volatile of the group, coming across with a bit more maturity. Her superpower is her breath's capacity to freeze objects. Kathy Cavadini, who voiced Blossom, has an extensive list of voice roles on her resume, as the others did, including that of Tanya Mauskowitz from An American Tail, Fievel Goes West, another popular movie from the 90s. The three actresses are hot property, even today at Comic-Cons and other festivals that celebrate animation. In examining video posted online from these events, they don't talk much about the plots and themes in a general sense, but rather jump in and out of voice and recount past shows. Tara Strong told Robert Lloyd of the LA Weekly, "I think all children love to watch cartoons because it's a fantasy world where anything can happen. If someone gets mad at someone else, they throw them off a cliff or pull off their head or whatever." Advanced TV Herstory agrees with Ms. Strong and sometimes relates to the desire to throw someone off an animated cliff. The girls are the work of Craig McCracken, a cartoonist. McCracken's childhood is totally responsible for the creation of the Powerpuff Girls. In interviews, he talks openly about his interest in drawing at an early age. McCracken tracked all sorts of comic book characters and superheroes, coming to master the styles and plot developments of the most popular ones of American culture. His passion for drawing and his portfolio met the high standards of Cal Art, one of the country's most prestigious art schools. While at Cal Art, he roomed with Gendy Tartakovsky, who created Dexter's Lab and other Cartoon Network hits. In fulfilling assignments at Cal Art, McCracken tells he developed a full storyboard for a set of 3 superheroes he had been mulling for a long time. Modeled somewhat off the Big Eyes children of artist Margaret Keane's work, McCracken developed their backstory and their methods of interacting with villains. At the time of his student work, right up until he pitched the project to Cartoon Network, they were known as the Whoop-Ass Girls.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice. These were the ingredients chosen to create the perfect little girl. But Professor Utonium accidentally added a can of Whoop-Ass to the concoction. Thus, the Whoop-Ass Girls were born. Using their ultra superpowers, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup have dedicated their lives to fighting crime and the forces of evil.
The secret ingredient that granted the girls superpowers was indeed a can of Whoop-Ass. The first short story was Whoop-Ass Stew and can be found online. The characters and animation strongly resemble the cartoons of today. Clever. It was a classic comic book styling, as McCracken told Emru Summer in Frames Per Second magazine back in 1995. He said that was the thing I liked about Powerpuff Girls, because of its comic book sensibility, of being able to pick apart the things that you find in comic books and play with them. Because this idea, the criminal saying, well, the way to establish myself is to beat such and such good guy, that's straight out of old superhero comics. A few years later, McCracken told LA Weekly, quote, "I wanted to do a superhero show where you really felt these characters being strong and tough and heroes and kicking ass. And what better contrast than to have them be 3 cute, little, innocent-looking things? That's basically the heart of the show. This cute little girl punching a bad guy and his teeth flying out. That's the visual soul of the show," McCracken says. This interview from Season 1's DVD bonus gives you a sense of how playful yet thoughtful McCracken has been in his development of the girls.
Okay, Space Ghost welcomes you to the Ghost Planet.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
please say hello and state your name for the benefit of our audience on Earth and in outer space.
Hello, my name's Craig McCracken.
What do you do for Hanna-Barbera, Craig?
I make cartoons. I make the Powerpuff Girls, about these 3 kindergarten-age superheroes who fly around and beat up bad guys.
How can these girls fly? They don't have any capes.
That's okay. You don't really need it. It's all in the mind, basically. You know, it's a mental thing.
Now, let me ask you, do the Powerpuff Girls have cooties?
Boys think so, but you know, they're like super cooties, so it's not too bad. You know, it's pretty cool.
Do you think these girls are old enough to fight crime?
I don't think crime fighting takes any specific age. I think as long as you have, you know, the gumption and the gusto and you believe in good and protecting the world, I think everything's...
Who do you think is the most diabolical villain that the Powerpuff Girls have ever faced?
Probably be Mojo Jojo, which is this evil monkey guy whose criminal mind has evolved beyond a normal human's mind, but he's like totally upset because he's still a monkey. He hasn't physically evolved, but his mind has evolved beyond, and so he really takes it to Powerpuff Girls. 1, because they're girls and they're superheroes, and 2, because they're human beings, and that just gnaws at him.
Even in early drawings, McCracken created a set of standards that contribute to the focus of each character and the overall modern look of the show. Hands have never come to formation because they're not necessary. Animators, even today, are instructed on body, leg, and arm features, and to make sure their feet look like, quote, socks filled with wet sand, end quote. The girls are colorful, whereas Professor Utonium, their creator, who mishandled the Chemical X, is depicted with a strong black and white rendering. Cartoon Network was founded in 1992. It came about following a series of major media transactions that resulted in a single company holding a treasure trove of classic animated entertainment. Ted Turner had bought out Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer United Artists, but sold back part of those holdings. Turner retained the MGM TV and film library, which included vintage animated cartoons. And 2 years later, Turner bought out Hanna-Barbera Productions. So Cartoon Network encountered many challenges in its early years. Original programming like the Powerpuff Girls only came about after a new division, Cartoon Network Studios, was developed. Other titles from those very creative years, with McCracken and his school chums at the drafting tables of Cartoon Network Studios, Cow and Chicken, Courage the Cowardly Dog, and Johnny Bravo. If you are unfamiliar with these very clever, very modern cartoons, please go to anywhere online and catch a couple episodes. They really they put a whole new face on cartoons. So competing in the field of animated shows, the team behind the Powerpuff Girls was recognized for excellence in many fields. From 1999 to 2005, they were nominated for Emmy Awards, Annie Awards, and Kids' Choice Awards across many categories. If you follow advanced TV history, you're familiar with the Emmy Awards. And now you'll know that the Annie Awards are recognition from the LA branch of the International Animated Film Association, and the Kids' Choice Awards is an annual Nickelodeon Network effort. In 2000, Don Shank won an Emmy and an Annie for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Animation. James Venable, Thomas Chase, and Steve Rucker won an Annie Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement for Musical Score on an animated TV production, and it was for the episode entitled Meet the Beatles, which contains all sorts of Beatles allusions. And Frank Gardner won an Emmy in 2005 for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Animation. So if you are noting a trend, however, it's that there were a lot of men behind the scenes doing a lot of the production work, and we know at least that there are 3 women who are voicing the girls. But it's a show that appeals to audiences of all ages and who can readily find something to like about it, whether it's the music, its visual simplicity, or pop culture references. Between the novelty of it being a show featuring girls and that it's one of the first original cartoon series that's been memorable and well done to be produced in a long, long time, the Powerpuff Girls became a hit in America and throughout the world. Back in 2000, then Cartoon Network VP for Animation, Linda Semensky, speculated to LA Weekly reporter Robert Lloyd that, quote, the official breakdown is 2/3 kids, 1/3 adults. But since there are no Nielsen homes in college dorms, I figure there's another percentage of college students watching. That was the audience. Without question, the lightning rise of series put Cartoon Network on the map as a production house and TV channel. It is available in more than 14 languages across 145 countries today. As the series was converted into other languages, their names of Bubbles, Buttercup, and Blossom gave way to names that drew upon positive images within the home culture. For instance, the Latin American names translate to chocolate, bubble, and acorn. Throughout its 6 seasons, the Powerpuff Girls had strong ratings, set merchandising records, and landed on 2002 TV Guide's 50 Greatest Cartoon Characters of All Time, and their slot, number 17. In addition to the many Beatles references in the episode Meet the Beatles, the one that won the awards, many other episodes contain pop culture references really throughout the entire series run, such as Schoolhouse Rock, Toys R Us, with an episode entitled Ploys R Us, and various other clever plays on words such as Hot Air Buffoon, these are titles, Something's a Miz, and Cootie Gras, and that would be Cootie Gras. If you look closely at the mayor's office, you'll see it bears a striking resemblance to Commissioner Gordon's from the 1960s live-action TV show Batman. And while some of this may be lost on the very young viewer, these cultural tie-ins offer an opportunity for parent and child to discuss the show, or for it to get a much richer conversation in the college dorm. Another reason for adults to appreciate the show was the exposure to new bands and performers who provided the theme song and action music. The Scottish trio Biss, largely an unknown commodity in the U.S., was asked by Hanna-Barbera producers to develop a theme song for the girls. They wrote and performed the ending theme song that plays while credits roll. As Biss band member Manda Rin told MTV News in 1998, quote, "I think it's a good thing for us to do. It shows that we can do these kind of things when asked. Like, not many bands could say, 'Yeah, right, you got a week to do a cartoon theme tune. Can you do it?' Not many probably could, but we turned it around, and they're so happy with it. They just say, 'Oh, it's the best chorus you've ever written,' and stuff." I get the sense there wasn't a lot of ego or expectation going on into the show's launch. But it is clear that through his thoughtfulness, McCracken wanted the girls to generate joy for viewers of all ages, erring on the side of simplicity and allowing the viewer full use of his or her imagination. McCracken told Lloyd of the LA Weekly back in 2000, quote, "People have asked if we're ever going to do a live-action Powerpuff Girls. But I wouldn't want to because then you're defining them. They'll have fingers and they'll have noses and they'll be real little girls, and it just won't be the same. But as cartoons, they're kind of a catch-all." End quote. And the lessons contained within episodes are universal. Really, they're not even age-specific. For instance, in the episode Insect Inside, cockroaches threaten to overtake Townsville. The girls have to get a grip on their own phobia in order to foil Roach Coach's plan. And in the episode Tough Love, a gas is emitted throughout Townsville, turning the residents who love them against the girls. They have to handle the hate while clearing the air of the town. Other plots? Bubbles wants to be taken more seriously. Broccoli aliens have to be conquered. The Sandman's scheme to get sleep educates about the time zones of the world. And the formula is always a little good versus bad, with a kindergarten appeal and clever language or twists for older viewers. The girls battled animals, most frequently the monkey Mojo Jojo, aliens, men, boys, women, and girls, including variations of themselves who took the form of the Rowdy Rough Boys. This is a string of audio that charts Mojo Jojo's plan to devise his own superheroes to destroy the girls.
Come Curse those accursed Powerpuff Girls. They always defeat my plans. I must devise a plan so diabolical, so sinister, it will bring those tiny titans to their knees. I need to beat them at their own game. I need to fight fire with fire. I need to make a phone call.
Hey, shut up in there.
His plan is to get a hold of Professor Utonium and attempt to recreate the experiment that resulted in the Powerpuff Girls.
Hello?
Hello? May I speak to Professor Utonium?
Who shall I say is calling?
Oh, no one he'd know, just a curious stranger.
Professor! There's a stranger on the phone!
Hello, Mr. Stranger. What can I do for you?
Oh, hi, I'm calling from Townsville Community College, and I'm doing a report on the Powerpuff Girls, and I was wondering, what exactly are those little girls made of?
Oh, well, the Powerpuff Girls. Well, let's see now. 8 cups of sugar, a pinch of spice, 1 tablespoon of everything nice, and now this one's important, accidentally had a drop of chemical X, and voila.
That's it? I mean, wow, thanks.
I also have a great recipe for pound...
Sugar and spice and everything nice? That's too girlish. I need something tougher, harder, more manly. What are little boys made of?
The writers set Mojo Jojo to thinking about a substance that could be as powerful and bad as chemical X. Now remember, the real audience of this show is kids, so naturally, Mojo Jojo, in his jail cell, has few resources, but a toilet is one of them. You can use your imagination for the rest.
Let's see now. Snips and snails and a puppy dog tail. All that leaves is chemical X. There's got to be something around here with that potency. Let's see. Aha! Yes, definitely chemical X. The moon is in proper alignment. A cauldron awaits, and the ingredients are ripe. Let the seeds of evil bear fruit.
And thus the Rowdy Rough Boys are born. As you might expect, the girls duke it out with the boys and ultimately prevail.
Ah, my children.
Hands off! Who do you think you are anyway, Pops?
Why, yes, I am your father. Children?
Hey, we ain't no babies! We're the Rowdy Rough Boys! Boomer! Butch, we're here to kick some butt. And since yours is the only one around, we're gonna start with you.
Oh, no, boys. You don't want to kick my butt. My butt is as rotten as yours. What you want are butts settled on the throne of justice.
Yeah!
Butts planted in the soil of nobility.
Yeah!
Butts nestled between the pillars of peace and love. The butts you want to kick are the butts of the Powerpuff Girls.
Let's get them!
I'd be glad to take you to them if we only had a way out of here.
The show is treasured today by women, and I'm guessing even a few men of all ages. As it reached its pinnacle of popularity, critics hammered it for all sorts of shortcomings. It's hard to imagine any cartoon with strong male characters garnering the kinds of shots and snarks that the Powerpuff Girls endured. Is it jealousy or what that causes someone to have to examine so closely so as to find something wrong with another's work? If these critics had worked as hard dissecting boy-oriented cartoons, then Garfield the cat would have been put on a permanent diet, and Bam Bam from the Flintstones would have been called, Spike. An immediate and relentless criticism was about the violent nature of the girls' problem-solving. Yes, they punched, kicked, threw, tipped things over, and in general went toe-to-toe with the villains in their way. Critics, evidently, were upset that they didn't just use their words. And sadly, most of these critics were women, like Paula Nechak, who reviewed the Powerpuff Girls movie for the Seattle Post-Intelligencer in 2002. From her perfect perch and Selectric typewriter of the early 1970s, I'm being facetious here, Nechak describes the movie's plot and concludes, quote, "You have to wonder, no matter how enjoyable and innocuous the movie may be to adults capable of processing the images and subliminal message, how much constant, chronic intensity and overstimulation a small brain can handle. I can't help but worry that the film's positive message, that people fear and despise the very things that make someone special, and that girls are as capable of saving the world as boys, will be overshadowed by the overwhelming way in which that message is visually delivered." Thank you, Paula Nechak, for taking the time to worry about how this movie, most likely mainly attended by girls, would harm their brains. You evidently hadn't looked around at video games in 2002. Well, in 2015, through the interweb, a series of tubes, I can go back and look at the list of the top 10, which rank Metroid Prime, Grand Theft Auto 3, Battlefield 1942, and Grand Theft Auto Vice City among the top 6. No subliminal messaging in any of those experiences. This criticism of the girls' violence hits particularly close to home. One Halloween, daughter Allison selected the green Powerpuff Girl. Actually, it might have been the last remaining Powerpuff Girl costume at the store, because I don't think that the green one was necessarily her favorite. Anyway, there must have been a check-in at her elementary school where kids had to say what their costume would be. She was told by the principal, who shall remain nameless, that the Powerpuff Girls were too violent. She had to be something else, at least for the school party. Now, this very same principal, who shall remain nameless, doled out all sorts of judgment about Halloween costumes, telling one of our son's friends, a boy, that he couldn't be a pumpkin because the stem could hurt someone. What fifth-grade boy isn't going to ponder that visual for a long time to come? Okay, back to other criticisms. Now that the girls have been with us for 18 years and are about to return, they bring with them all sorts of social meaning created by others. Even the response by the generation for whom the show was originally intended has been studied by academics for signs of how the show has contributed or eroded feminism. Advanced TV Herstory has plenty to do to mine the backstories and celebrate the good work of women who work hard in TV. Buttercup, Bubbles, and Blossom and their plots have women in their writer's room, and the bloggers believe that McCracken had to have been influenced by the riot girl music of the early 1990s. Here we are in 2015, and it still feels like we can't leave a real live strong woman alone to simply be strong. We aren't doing much better with our fictional ones either. So in conducting research into the Powerpuff Girls, as viewed through the feminist lens, I found 2 articles that I think are noteworthy. And I will always say that scholarly work of women's TV shows and the women characters in them is important. Usually they're written by women, the articles, and they bring a professional or scientific understanding to the show that establishes a whole new level of work, of understanding, of being able to see the value of the show. So article number 1 is entitled Powerpuff Girls, Fighting Evil Gender Messages or Postmodern Paradox, written by Carol Baruti Corcoran and Judith Parker, and it was published in 2004 in a book entitled The Psychology of Prejudice and Discrimination, edited by Zhan Lao Chin. One of the authors recounts the exposure of her daughter to the show and the sessions in which they viewed episodes together. The authors write about the chemical X accident that served as the girls' origin and how that accident relates to the girls' underlying lack of control. Quote, "Real power cannot be found in packaged products. Instead, it demands a sense of agency, as in a mode of exerting power, and in doing so, an instrumentality that confers control. Thus, Powerpuff Girls lack agency, and they don't even know it. Their girl power exists as a quirk that derives from the needs of an external agent, their creator, a man." End quote. Now, maybe we at Advanced TV Herstory just tend to look only at the big picture. Or in the case of women characters on TV and behind the scenes in production, the fact that you have to be in the game in order to have any agency at all. The authors take issue with the fact that the girls occasionally get rescued or assisted by Professor Utonium. They wonder how the show would have looked had the girls been black instead of white. Quote, "For one thing," they write, They wouldn't have been named Blossom, Buttercup, and Bubbles. No, they would have boisterous names like Tawana, Lakeisha, and Shamika. Instead of keeping the town of Townsville free of danger, they would be the danger. Badass female gangstas on a crime spree in New Jill City. I won't go any further because we wander into a distinction of generational feminism. Pragmatists, idealists, pioneers, doers, thinkers, all are losing sight of the big picture. But to lose that sight requires that there is a shared vision to begin with, the picture. The other article I found online and found interesting was Evie Kendall's work, There's No One Perfect Girl, Third Wave Feminism and the Powerpuff Girls, which appeared in the Colloquy magazine published in 2012 by Monash University. In her introduction, Kendall contends, quote, the Powerpuff Girls embraces third wave feminist ideology with its focus on girl power and consumerism, while also abandoning the more individual aspects of this brand of feminism by exploring the meaning of sisterhood and female empowerment through community. Kendall advances detail within the context of feminism about the girls' superhero status, the tools they use, how adult women are depicted in the show, and even the importance of them not having secret identities. It's well-researched and worth a read if you're into that sort of thing. Evie Kendall is a researcher and teacher at Monash University, which has 5 campuses in Australia. It just goes to show you that the Powerpuff Girl, third wave feminism conversation has stretched across the planet. So as we head into the PPG second generation, it'll be interesting to see how the writers position the girls and the plots. Surely the time-tested conflicts of good versus evil haven't changed, but there will be those who look to the innocence of a children's show, actually an entire brand that is known for its cleverness and complex thinking, and see something wrong. With the industry challenges faced by women to be on screen and behind the camera, we surely have bigger mountains to climb on behalf of our sisters, daughters, and granddaughters. Sort of the equivalent of saving the world before bedtime, as it were. So it's time to build and defend, not tear down. You've been listening to Advanced TV Herstory. Audio clips came from the series episode entitled Rowdy Rough Boys, available online, and bonus features of Season 1's DVD set. You can also find online a very thorough article written by Robert Lloyd for LA Weekly, dated November 22nd, 2000. It's always good to hear from listeners, so please send us your ideas for future installments of this podcast. Find us on Twitter at TV Herstory or on Facebook at Advanced TV Herstory. This script and past show scripts are available at my website, CynthiaBemisAbrams.com, and I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. Thanks for listening.